The elevator doors slid open on the 42nd floor, and Rebecca Anders stepped into the marble-floored lobby of Lockhart Financial Group with her heart hammering against her ribs, clutching a portfolio that contained 5 years of her professional life compressed into 20 carefully curated pages. She had not expected to be here. Not really. When her former college mentor, Professor Elizabeth Hartley, had called 3 weeks ago suggesting Rebecca apply for the Director of Marketing position at one of Manhattan's most prestigious investment firms, Rebecca had laughed. She was doing fine at her boutique agency in Brooklyn. Thank you very much, creating campaigns for local restaurants and small businesses. But Professor Hartley had been insistent, almost urgent, in a way that made Rebecca wonder if her mentor knew something she did not. Rebecca Anders. A polished woman in her 30s appeared, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "I'm Jennifer Cole, head of HR. Thank you for coming. Mr. Lockhart is running just a few minutes behind schedule, but he should be ready shortly." Rebecca nodded, following Jennifer through glass doors into a waiting area that overlooked the Hudson River. The view was stunning, all gleaming water and distant bridges, and she found herself pressing closer to the window, momentarily forgetting her nervousness. "Impressive, is it not?" The voice came from behind her, deep and warm, with an edge of amusement that made her turn quickly. The man standing in the doorway was not what she had expected. For some reason, she had pictured someone older, someone with gray hair and reading glasses, perhaps a paunch from too many business lunches. Instead, Quincy Lockhart looked to be in his mid-30s, tall and broad-shouldered in a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been made specifically for his frame. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as though he had been running his hands through it, and his eyes were an unexpected shade of green that seemed to catch the light from the windows. "It never gets old," he continued, moving into the room with an easy confidence. "I have been working in this building for 8 years, and I still find myself staring out these windows like a tourist." Rebecca felt her professional smile falter into something more genuine. "It is beautiful, though I imagine the view from your office is even better." "Only marginally." He extended his hand, and when she took it, his grip was firm and warm. "Quincy Lockhart, you must be Rebecca Anders. Professor Hartley has told me quite a bit about you." That caught her off guard. "You know Professor Hartley? She was my mentor too, actually. Different program, different decade, but she has a way of staying in touch with her students." He gestured toward his office. "Shall we?" As they settled into leather chairs separated by an expansive mahogany desk, Rebecca tried to reconcile this information. Professor Hartley had taught economics and business strategy, primarily to graduate students. Rebecca had taken her undergraduate marketing seminar almost by accident, filling a requirement, and had found herself drawn to the older woman's sharp wit and genuine interest in her students' futures. "So," Quincy said, leaning back in his chair with an openness that surprised her. Most executives she had met maintained a careful distance, a professional wall. "Tell me why you want to leave your current position." Rebecca had prepared for this question, had rehearsed an answer about growth opportunities and career advancement. But something about the way he asked it, the genuine curiosity in his expression, made her answer honestly instead. "I am not sure I do," she admitted. "Professor Hartley called me 3 weeks ago and practically insisted I apply. I love what I do now, working with small businesses, helping them find their voice in a crowded market. But she seemed to think this position would be a good fit, and I have never known her to be wrong about these things." Quincy laughed, a real laugh that transformed his face from handsome to something approaching devastating. "That sounds exactly like Elizabeth. She called me a month ago and told me she had the perfect candidate for this position." said she was brilliant, creative, and entirely too modest about her own abilities. She said that, among other things. He picked up her portfolio, flipping through it with obvious interest. "Tell me about this campaign, the one for the community garden in Red Hook." For the next 40 minutes, they talked. Not in the stilted question and answer format Rebecca had expected, but in a genuine exchange of ideas. Quincy was not just looking for someone to make his firm look good, he explained. He was looking for someone who could help him transform the entire approach to how financial services communicated with potential clients. "The industry has a problem," he said, standing to pace by the windows in a way that suggested he did this often when thinking. "We speak in jargon and abstractions. We create campaigns that appeal to other financial professionals, not to the people who actually need our services. I want to change that. I want Lockhart Financial to be approachable, understandable, human." "That is ambitious," Rebecca said carefully. "A lot of your competitors rely on that mystique, the sense that finance is complicated and exclusive." "Exactly, and it is hurting everyone except the people at the top." He turned to face her, and the passion in his expression was startling. "My father built this firm on the principle that good financial advice should be accessible. When he died 5 years ago, I took over, and I have spent that time trying to honor his vision while also modernizing it. But I cannot do that alone." Rebecca felt something shift in her chest, a recognition she could not quite name. "Professor Hartley knew you would say that, did she not?" "Probably." He returned to his desk, but instead of sitting, he leaned against it, crossing his arms. "She has an uncanny ability to see connections before anyone else does. It is actually a bit unnerving." "I have experienced that," Rebecca agreed. "She once told me I would end up in marketing before I had even declared my major." They shared a smile, and Rebecca felt the last of her nervousness evaporate. This did not feel like an interview anymore. It felt like a conversation with someone who genuinely understood what she cared about, who shared her values in a way that her current colleagues, as nice as they were, simply did not. When she left the building 2 hours later, she had a job offer pending, contingent on a few formalities and reference checks. She also had Quincy's direct phone number and an invitation to coffee the following week to discuss the role in more detail. Professor Hartley called that evening while Rebecca was stress cooking in her tiny apartment kitchen, making enough pasta to feed a small army. "Well," her former mentor asked without preamble, "how did it go? Why did you not tell me you knew him?" Rebecca demanded, stirring sauce with more vigor than necessary. "Why did you not mention that he was, I do not know, young and passionate and actually interested in making a difference? Would you have believed me?" Professor Hartley's voice was warm with amusement. "Or would you have assumed I was exaggerating to get you to apply?" Rebecca paused, considering. "The latter, probably." "Exactly. Some things you need to discover for yourself." There was a beat of silence then. "He is a good man, Rebecca. Brilliant, ethical, and genuinely committed to doing things right. His father was one of my closest friends, and watching Quincy take over the firm and honor that legacy has been remarkable." "You could have mentioned all of that," Rebecca said, "but without heat." "I could have. But then you would have gone into that meeting with preconceptions. This way, you formed your own opinion." Professor Hartley's tone grew more serious. "What was that opinion, by the way?" Rebecca turned off the stove, moving to her small balcony where she could see the lights of Manhattan in the distance. "I think he might be the real thing, someone who actually wants to change the industry, not just profit from it." "Good. Then you will take the position." "I have not decided yet," Rebecca hedged, even though she already knew what her answer would be. "I need to think about it." "Of course you do." Professor Hartley sounded entirely too pleased with herself. Think carefully, dear, but not too long. Some opportunities do not come around twice. Rebecca started at Lockhart Financial 3 weeks later, after giving proper notice at her agency and enduring a surprisingly emotional farewell party. Her new office was on the 40th floor, 2 below Quincy's, with a view that made her morning coffee taste better somehow. The first month was a whirlwind of meetings, introductions, and deep dives into existing campaigns. Rebecca quickly realized that while Lockhart Financial had excellent financial advisors and analysts, their marketing had been stuck in the same approach for the better part of a decade. Everything was formal, distant, filled with stock photos of diverse people shaking hands and smiling at laptops. "It is all so generic," she told Quincy during one of their weekly strategy meetings. They had fallen into a pattern of meeting Thursday afternoons in his office, ostensibly to review her progress, but actually engaging in wide-ranging discussions about the firm, the industry, and their respective visions for the future. "Show me what you would do differently," he said, pushing his laptop across the desk toward her. Rebecca pulled up the mock-ups she had been working on, campaigns that featured real clients telling real stories. A young couple buying their first home. A woman starting a business after years of working for someone else. A man planning for retirement while caring for aging parents. "These are their actual words," she explained, clicking through the presentations. "Not scripted, not polished. Just honest conversations about their financial goals and how your advisors help them get there." Quincy was quiet for a long moment, studying each slide with intense focus. When he finally looked up, his expression was thoughtful. "This is exactly what I wanted, but I could not articulate it." "How did you know?" "Because this is what I do," Rebecca said simply. "I listen to what people actually care about, not what we think they should care about. And what people care about is not abstract concepts like portfolio diversification. They care about security, opportunity, peace of mind." "You are remarkable," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her heart skip. "Do you know that?" Rebecca felt heat rise in her cheeks. Over the past month, she had tried very hard not to notice how attractive her boss was, how his laugh made something warm unfurl in her chest, how she found herself looking forward to their Thursday meetings more than was strictly professional. But comments like that made it difficult to maintain her carefully constructed boundaries. "I am just doing my job," she said, reaching for her water glass to give herself something to do. "No," Quincy said firmly. "You are transforming how we think about our work. That is more than a job. That is a calling." Their eyes met across the desk, and for a moment the air between them felt charged with something neither of them was ready to acknowledge. Then Quincy's phone buzzed, breaking the spell, and they both turned back to the presentation with perhaps more focus than necessary. As summer shifted into fall, Rebecca found herself settling into her new role with surprising ease. Her team responded well to her ideas. The executives were impressed with her preliminary campaigns, and even the financial advisors, initially skeptical about marketing changes, began to embrace the new approach. But it was her growing friendship with Quincy that occupied more of her thoughts than she wanted to admit. Their Thursday meetings had expanded to include occasional lunches, coffee breaks when they both needed to escape the office, and one memorable afternoon when he had helped her move a new desk into her apartment because her friends were all mysteriously busy. "You do not have to do this," she had protested when he showed up in jeans and a faded college t-shirt that revealed arms more muscular than his suit suggested. "You are my boss. This is above and beyond." "I am also your friend," he had said, hefting one end of the desk with ease. "Friends help friends move furniture. It is practically a law," watching him work, laughing at his running commentary about the narrow stairwell and questionable life choices that led people to own desks in fourth-floor walk-ups. Rebecca had felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. This was not just attraction, though there was plenty of that. This was genuine affection, the kind that came from seeing someone at their most human and liking what you saw. Later, sitting on her couch eating Chinese takeout because they were both too tired to cook, Quincy had asked her about Professor Hartley. When did you first meet her? He wanted to know, using chopsticks with surprising dexterity. My sophomore year, Rebecca said, curling her legs under her. I took her marketing seminar expecting it to be easy, an elective to fill a requirement. Instead, it completely changed how I thought about communication and connection. What about you, graduate school? I was getting my MBA, convinced I had everything figured out. He shook his head at the memory. She demolished my assumptions in the first week and then helped me rebuild them into something actually useful. When my father got sick, she was the one who convinced me I was ready to take over the firm, even though I felt completely unprepared. How old were you? Rebecca asked softly. 30. Young for a CEO, especially in finance. There were a lot of people who thought I would fail. His jaw tightened slightly. Some days I still worry they were right. They were not, Rebecca said with certainty. Everything I have seen in the past few months proves that. You care about this firm and its clients in a way that goes beyond profit margins. That matters. Quincy looked at her then, really looked at her, with an intensity that made her breath catch. Thank you, he said quietly. I needed to hear that. The moment stretched between them, full of things neither was quite ready to say. Then Quincy stood, gathering the takeout containers with hands that were not quite steady. I should go. Early meeting tomorrow. After he left, Rebecca sat on her couch for a long time, staring at the spot where he had been sitting and trying to convince herself that what she was feeling was just professional admiration. She was not particularly successful. Professor Hartley invited them both to dinner in October, a few weeks before the launch of Rebecca's first major campaign for the firm. She lived in a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights that was exactly what Rebecca had imagined, filled with books, art, and comfortable furniture that invited long conversations. I am so pleased you both could make it, Professor Hartley said, greeting them at the door with warm hugs. She was in her late 60s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. It has been too long since I had two of my favorite people under the same roof. Over dinner, a remarkable homemade lasagna that Professor Hartley claimed was her mother's recipe, they talked about the upcoming campaign, changes in the financial industry, and eventually, more personal topics. Rebecca learned that Quincy played piano, that he volunteered at a youth center in the Bronx teaching financial literacy, and that he still missed his father every single day. He would be proud of you, Professor Hartley said, reaching across the table to squeeze Quincy's hand. What you have done with the firm, the way you have honored his values while making it your own, it is exactly what he hoped for. Quincy's voice was rough when he answered. I hope so. Rebecca found herself blinking back tears, moved by the obvious affection between her mentor and her boss, by the vulnerability in Quincy's expression. When Professor Hartley excused herself to get dessert, Rebecca reached over and squeezed his other hand. She is right, Rebecca said softly. Anyone can see you are doing something special. Quincy turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. Having you there, working on this with me, it has made all the difference. I hope you know that. They were still holding hands when Professor Hartley returned with coffee and tiramisu, though they pulled apart quickly. But their mentor's knowing smile suggested she had seen exactly what she had expected to see. Later, Walking to the subway together because they discovered they were heading in the same direction, Quincy cleared his throat. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," Rebecca said, pulling her coat tighter against the October chill. "You ever get the feeling that Elizabeth is matchmaking?" He said it lightly, almost joking, but there was something serious underneath. Rebecca felt her heart rate pick up. "The thought has crossed my mind," she admitted. "Especially tonight." "She did bring us together," Quincy continued, shoving his hands in his pockets. "Got you to apply for the job, encouraged me to hire you. She has been finding excuses to get us in the same room ever since." "Would that bother you?" Rebecca asked, not quite brave enough to look at him. "If she was." They had stopped walking, standing on a quiet street corner under a streetlight that cast golden light across Quincy's features. "No," he said finally. "It would not bother me. Would it bother you?" Rebecca thought about all the moments over the past few months. The Thursday meetings that had become the highlight of her week. The way her stomach flipped when she saw his name on her phone. The growing certainty that she was falling for someone she absolutely should not be falling for because he was her boss, and this could complicate everything. "No," she whispered. "It would not bother me." Quincy stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "I have been trying not to feel this way," he admitted. "You work for me. It is complicated and potentially messy and probably a terrible idea." "Probably," Rebecca agreed, her own hand rising to rest against his chest, feeling his heart beating as quickly as her own. "But I cannot seem to stop," he continued, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "Every time I see you, every conversation we have, I just fall a little more." "Quincy," she breathed. And then he was kissing her, soft and tentative at first, then deeper as she pressed closer. It felt like something clicking into place, like a question she had not known she was asking finally receiving its answer. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Quincy rested his forehead against hers. "We should probably talk about this, about what it means, how we handle it at work." "We should," Rebecca agreed. "But maybe not right this second," he laughed, pulling her close again. "Not right this second," he confirmed. They stood there for a long time, wrapped around each other under the streetlight while the city moved around them. When Rebecca finally made it home that night, she found a text from Professor Hartley waiting. "About time, you two." "I was beginning to think I had lost my touch." Rebecca laughed, texting back a heart emoji, and fell asleep smiling. The next few weeks were a delicate dance of navigating new territory. At work, they maintained professionalism, though Rebecca caught herself smiling at him across conference rooms more than was probably wise. Outside the office, they explored this new dimension of their relationship with the careful attention of two people who knew what they had was worth protecting. Quincy took her to a piano bar in the West Village where he knew the owner, and ended up playing a set that left her absolutely stunned by his talent. Rebecca brought him to her favorite hole-in-the-wall Thai restaurant in Brooklyn, where the food was incredible, and the owner remembered her order. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, discovering each other in ways that went beyond the professional respect they had built. "I need to tell you something," Quincy said one evening as they walked along the High Line, hands intertwined. "About the company, about me." Rebecca felt a flutter of nervousness. "Okay. Lockhart Financial is not just successful, it is very successful. My father built it from nothing, and when I took over, I was fortunate enough to catch several trends at the right time. I am not just comfortable, Rebecca, I am wealthy. Very wealthy." She stopped walking, turning to face him. "How wealthy are we talking? The kind where I do not actually need to work anymore, but I do because it matters to me." He looked uncomfortable, vulnerable in a way she had not seen before. "I am telling you because I want you to hear it from me. And because I need you to know that what I feel for you has nothing to do with any of that. You saw me as Quincy, as a person, before you knew anything about the money. Rebecca processed this information, thinking about the expensive suits that suddenly made more sense, the ease with which he had offered her a salary that was double what she had been making. "How much is very wealthy?" she asked carefully. "Forbes estimated my net worth at around 200 million last year. It is probably higher now." Rebecca sat down on a nearby bench, needing a moment. 200 million. Her boyfriend, if that was what he was not just successful. He was a millionaire many times over. Quincy sat beside her, tension radiating from his frame. "Please say something." "I am processing," she said slowly. "This is not something I expected to hear tonight. Does it change things?" His voice was quiet, almost afraid. Rebecca thought about who he was, the man she had come to know over the past few months. He was kind, passionate about his work, generous with his time and attention. He volunteered with underprivileged kids. He still got emotional talking about his father. He had helped her move furniture and ate Chinese takeout on her couch without complaint. "No," she said finally, "it does not change who you are, and who you are is what matters to me." The relief in his expression was profound. "I was worried. Some people, when they find out, they change. They start seeing the money instead of me." "I am not some people," Rebecca said firmly. "And if you buy me an outrageously expensive gift to try to impress me, I will return it and make you take me to that dumpling place in Chinatown instead." Quincy laughed, pulling her close. "Deal. Though I reserve the right to occasionally spoil you in reasonable ways." "Reasonable ways are acceptable," she allowed, kissing him softly. "Just remember I fell for you when I thought you were just a regular millionaire CEO, not a mega millionaire CEO." "Just a regular millionaire CEO," he repeated, grinning. "You have such modest standards." The campaign launch in November was a resounding success. The authentic, human-centered approach resonated with exactly the demographic Lockhart Financial had been trying to reach. And within 2 weeks, they saw a significant uptick in consultations and new clients. Rebecca found herself fielding calls from industry publications wanting to interview her about the strategy, and Quincy glowed with pride at every opportunity to credit her vision. "You did this," he told her after a particularly positive board meeting. They were in his office, ostensibly reviewing quarterly projections but really just enjoying a few minutes alone. "This is all you. We did this," Rebecca corrected. "I had the ideas, but you gave me the platform and the trust to execute them." He pulled her close, kissing her temple. "Best decision I ever made, hiring you." "Second best," she murmured against his chest. "The best was kissing me on that street corner." Fair point. They had told HR about their relationship after the first month, wanting to ensure everything was above board. Jennifer in HR had been surprisingly unsurprised, handling the paperwork with professional efficiency and a knowing smile. The office had figured it out shortly after, but the response had been largely positive. Quincy was well liked, and Rebecca had won over her team through competence and genuine care for their work. Professor Hartley called them both in December, inviting them to her annual holiday party. When they arrived together, she greeted them with a smile that could only be described as triumphant. "I knew it," she said, hugging them both. "The moment I thought of introducing you two, I knew." "You are a meddler," Quincy said affectionately. "A brilliant, wonderful meddler, but a meddler nonetheless." "I prefer the term strategic connector," Professor Hartley said with dignity. "And I will have you know I only meddle when I am absolutely certain of the outcome." "What made you so certain about us?" Rebecca asked, genuinely curious. Professor Hartley looked at them both with warm affection. "Because you are both exactly what the other needed. Quincy, you needed someone who saw your vision and had the creativity to bring it to life. Rebecca, you needed someone who would value your talents and give you room to grow. But more than that, you are both good people, genuinely kind souls who deserve happiness. It seemed obvious to me that you could find it together. Thank you, Rebecca said, her voice thick with emotion, for seeing that, for bringing us together. My dear girl, I merely opened the door. You two did the hard work of walking through it. As Christmas approached, Quincy invited Rebecca to his apartment for the first time. She had been curious, especially after learning about his wealth, half expecting some ostentatious penthouse filled with expensive art and uncomfortable furniture. Instead, she found a beautiful but warm loft in Tribeca with exposed brick, comfortable couches, and walls covered in family photos. There was his father's piano in the corner, clearly well used and well loved. Bookshelves overflowing with everything from financial textbooks to science fiction novels. A kitchen that showed signs of actual cooking. This is lovely, she said, spinning slowly to take it all in. Very you. Were you expecting something different? He asked, helping her out of her coat. Maybe a little. Gold-plated fixtures. A pool table you never use. One of those modern art pieces that is just a red square. Quincy laughed. I do have some expensive art, but it is all pieces I actually love, and I use everything I own. What is the point otherwise? He made them dinner, an impressive pasta dish that he claimed was his one reliable recipe, and they ate by candlelight while snow began to fall outside the tall windows. I have something for you, Quincy said as they settled on the couch afterward. I know we said no gifts, but I could not help myself. Quincy, Rebecca warned. If this is a car or jewelry or something ridiculous like that, I will be very disappointed in you. It is not, I promise. He handed her a small, wrapped package. Open it. Inside was a leather portfolio, beautiful but not ostentatious, with her initials embossed on the front. When she opened it, she found a letter on Lockhart Financial letterhead. What is this? She asked, scanning the formal language. It is a promotion. Executive Vice President of Marketing and Communications. Full equity stake in the company, seat at the executive table, everything. He watched her face carefully. You have transformed this company in 6 months, Rebecca. You deserve to be recognized for that, to have a real voice in where we go from here. Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes. This is too much. It is exactly what you have earned, he said firmly. And before you worry, I ran this by the board and by HR. Everyone agrees you deserve this based purely on merit. The fact that I am completely in love with you is just a bonus. The words hung in the air between them. In love. He had said it so casually, so naturally, as though it was simply a fact rather than a declaration. You love me. Rebecca whispered. Quincy took her hands, his expression serious. I love you. I have probably loved you since that first interview when you told me you were not sure you wanted the job. You were so honest, so completely yourself, and I just thought, this is someone special. This is someone I want in my life. I love you too, Rebecca said, the words spilling out. I have been trying not to because it seemed too fast, too complicated, but I do. I love you so much. They kissed then, deep and passionate, the kind of kiss that promised futures and forever. When they finally pulled apart, Rebecca was crying and smiling at the same time. So you will take the promotion? Quincy asked, wiping away her tears with gentle thumbs. Yes, she said. Though I still want to go to that dumpling place regularly, executive vice president or not. Deal, he agreed. I will pencil in weekly dumpling dates. They spent Christmas together, a quiet celebration in his apartment with too much food and a tree that they decorated while arguing cheerfully about ornament placement. Quincy played Christmas carols on his father's piano, and Rebecca sang along in a voice that was enthusiastic if not particularly talented. "My father would have loved you," Quincy said as they sat together on the piano bench, his fingers trailing over the keys. "He always said the measure of a person was how they treated people who could do nothing for them. You do that naturally, seeing everyone as worth your time and attention." "I wish I could have met him," Rebecca said softly. "Me too. He played a few gentle chords. But I think he would approve of this of us. He always told me that when I found the right person, I would just know, that it would feel easy and right and like coming home." "Is that how this feels?" Rebecca asked. Quincy turned to face her fully. "From the very first conversation, yes. Like I had been waiting for you without even knowing it." They rang in the new year together at Professor Hartley's party, surrounded by former students and colleagues who all seemed delighted by their relationship. At midnight, as fireworks exploded over the city visible through the brownstones' windows, Quincy kissed Rebecca like she was the only person in the room. "To new beginnings," Professor Hartley toasted, raising her glass to them with a smile that suggested she had known this ending all along. The next few months flew by in a blur of work successes and personal joy. Rebecca settled into her new role with confidence, her campaigns continuing to push Lockhart Financial into new territories of client engagement and market share. Quincy supported her at every turn, their professional partnership enhanced rather than complicated by their personal relationship. They traveled together when they could, quick weekend trips to Boston and Philadelphia, and once, memorably, to Paris, where Quincy spoke at a conference and Rebecca explored the city's art museums. They established routines, favorite restaurants and Sunday morning rituals, and the easy comfort of two people building a life together. In March, a year after their first meeting, Quincy asked Rebecca to move in with him. They were at the dumpling place, their weekly tradition, when he brought it up. "Your lease is up in April," he said, attempting casual and failing. "I was thinking, maybe you do not need to renew it." Rebecca looked up from her soup dumplings. "Is that your way of asking me to move in with you?" "Yes. Though if you want a more romantic proposal, I can arrange something. Skywriting, a flash mob, one of those ridiculous proposals that teenagers do." She laughed. "I think this is perfect, actually. You, me, soup dumplings, and a completely unromantic but absolutely sincere invitation to share your space. Is that a yes?" "That is a definite yes." Moving in together was easier than Rebecca had expected. Her furniture mostly went into storage, though Quincy insisted on keeping her grandmother's quilt and the bookshelf she had built herself. They rearranged his loft to make it theirs, creating a shared home that reflected both their personalities. Professor Hartley came to their housewarming party in May, looking around with satisfaction. "Perfect," she declared. "Absolutely perfect. You are very pleased with yourself," Rebecca teased, handing her mentor a glass of wine. "I am," Professor Hartley agreed without shame. "I have been matching people for 40 years, my dear. Students with opportunities, colleagues with projects, friends with friends. But you too, this was my masterpiece." "What made you think of it?" Quincy asked, joining them. "What made you decide Rebecca was perfect for the job for me?" Professor Hartley smiled. "I knew you were looking for someone who understood that business could be both profitable and purposeful, someone creative who also grasped strategy, someone who would challenge you and support you in equal measure." She looked at Rebecca. "And I knew you were working below your potential, that you needed someone who would recognize your talents and give you room to soar." She paused, sipping her wine. "But honestly, it was simpler than that. I saw you both as individuals, considered what you each needed in your lives, and thought, yes, they would be wonderful together." "Thank you," Rebecca said, hugging her mentor tightly. for seeing that, for us. Always, my dear, always. That summer was golden. They worked hard, both passionate about the company's continued growth and evolution. But they also played hard, taking time for concerts in the park, long dinners with friends, quiet evenings at home. They learned each other's rhythms, the way Rebecca needed silence in the morning before coffee, and how Quincy liked to process his day by playing piano. They navigated disagreements with respect and care, both committed to protecting what they had built together. In September, just over 18 months after their first meeting, Quincy took Rebecca back to the street corner where they had first kissed. It was a Saturday evening, warm and perfect, and she was confused when he stopped walking. "Why are we here?" she asked, looking around the familiar corner. "Because this is where everything changed," Quincy said, taking both her hands. "This is where I stopped being your boss who had feelings he should not have, and became someone who was brave enough to admit what he wanted." "Quincy," Rebecca breathed, realization dawning as he dropped to one knee. "Rebecca Anders, you walked into my life and transformed everything. Not just the company, though you did that too, but me, my days, my understanding of what happiness could look like. You are brilliant and kind and funny, and absolutely the best thing that has ever happened to me." He pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a ring that was beautiful without being ostentatious, a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. "Will you marry me?" "Yes," Rebecca said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, standing to kiss her as people walking by stopped to applaud. It was perfect, exactly right. This public declaration in the place where their romance had begun. They called Professor Hartley immediately, the first person they wanted to share the news with. She answered on the first ring as though she had been waiting. "Well," she demanded. "How did you know I was calling about something specific?" Quincy asked, laughing. "Because I know you, both of you, so are you engaged or am I going to have to wait longer?" "We are engaged," Rebecca confirmed, holding up her hand even though their mentor could not see it. "Finally. I was beginning to think I would have to drop more hints. When is the wedding? And do not say you have not discussed it because I know you have both been thinking about it." She was right, of course. They had been circling the topic for months, neither quite brave enough to bring it up directly. But now, with the decision made, it all felt simple. "Spring," Rebecca said, looking at Quincy for confirmation. He nodded. "Something small, intimate, just people we love." "Perfect," Professor Hartley declared. "And I expect to be involved in the planning. After all, without me, you two would never have met." "We would never forget that," Quincy assured her. "You will be right there with us, every step of the way." The wedding took place the following April in Professor Hartley's garden, under a flowering cherry tree that provided a canopy of pink blossoms. The guest list was small, just close friends and family, exactly what they both wanted. Rebecca wore a simple dress that made Quincy's eyes shine with tears when he first saw her, and he wore a suit that was elegant without being overly formal. Professor Hartley served as an unofficial co-officiant, offering a reading about connection and purpose, and the unexpected ways that life brings people together. "I have spent my career teaching strategy," she said, looking at them both with affection. "But the best strategy is recognizing potential when you see it, whether in business or in people. These two had potential from the moment they met. I am just grateful I could be the one to make that meeting happen." When they exchanged vows, Rebecca and Quincy spoke from the heart about partnership and support, about choosing each other every day, about building a life that honored both their professional ambitions and their personal dreams. "You make me braver," Rebecca said, her voice steady despite the tears. "You see me not as I am but as I could be, and you give me the confidence to become that person." "You make me better," Quincy responded. "You remind me every day why the work matters, why choosing purpose over profit is not just noble but essential. You are my partner in every sense of the word." They kissed to enthusiastic applause, and then danced their first dance to a song that Quincy had learned on piano specifically for this moment, playing it live while Rebecca swayed in his arms. The reception was full of laughter and good food and toasts that ranged from heartfelt to hilarious. Former colleagues from Rebecca's old agency told embarrassing stories. Quincy's friends from business school revealed his terrible karaoke habit, and Professor Hartley gave a speech that had everyone crying and laughing in equal measure. "When I became a teacher," she said, raising her glass, "I thought my job was to share knowledge, and it was, certainly. But over time, I realized my real calling was recognizing potential and creating opportunities for that potential to flourish. Sometimes that meant connecting a student with a research project. Sometimes it meant recommending someone for a job. And sometimes," she looked directly at Rebecca and Quincy, "it meant introducing two exceptional people and then stepping back to let them discover each other." To Rebecca and Quincy, my two favorite success stories, both professional and personal, may your marriage be as fruitful as your partnership has been. They honeymooned in Italy, 2 weeks of lazy mornings and incredible food and exploring ancient cities hand in hand. They talked about the future, about the family they wanted to build, about how to balance career ambitions with personal priorities. They made love in sun-drenched rooms and made plans on terraces overlooking the Mediterranean. "I want kids," Rebecca said one evening as they watched the sunset from their hotel in Positano. "Not right away, but eventually. 2, maybe 3. "I want that too," Quincy agreed, pulling her closer. "A whole house full of noise and chaos and love. And piano lessons," Rebecca added. "You have to teach them piano." "Only if you teach them about good marketing," he countered. "Fair is fair. Deal." They returned home to New York ready to dive back into work, but with a new perspective on balance and priorities. Rebecca continued to innovate at Lockhart Financial, her campaigns winning industry awards and recognition. Quincy focused on expanding their client base while maintaining the firm's commitment to ethical, accessible financial guidance. Together, they made the company something truly special, a place where profit and purpose existed in harmony. A year into their marriage, Rebecca discovered she was pregnant. They told Professor Hartley over dinner at her brownstone, watching her face light up with joy. "A baby," she breathed. "Oh, my dears, that is wonderful news. You are going to be an honorary grandmother," Quincy informed her. "We already decided. This child is going to need all the mentorship and guidance they can get with us as parents." "I would be honored," Professor Hartley said, reaching across to squeeze both their hands. "Absolutely honored." Their daughter was born the following February, a healthy baby girl with Quincy's green eyes and Rebecca's determined expression. They named her Elizabeth, after the woman who had brought them together, with a middle name honoring Quincy's father. Professor Hartley cried when she held baby Elizabeth for the first time, and Rebecca captured the moment in a photograph that she later framed and hung in their living room. "She is perfect," Professor Hartley whispered. "Absolutely perfect. Just like her namesake," Quincy said, hugging his former mentor tightly. Life settled into a new rhythm, one that involved sleepless nights and baby giggles and the unique challenges of balancing executive careers with parenthood. But they made it work, supporting each other through exhaustion and joy, through professional triumphs and personal milestones. When Elizabeth turned 1, they threw a party in Professor Hartley's garden, the same place where they had been married. As Rebecca watched Quincy blow raspberries on their daughter's stomach while surrounded by friends and family. She thought about that first interview 3 years ago. How nervous she had been, how uncertain about changing jobs, how absolutely right Professor Hartley had been about everything. "What are you thinking about?" Quincy asked, coming to stand beside her while his mother entertained Elizabeth. "About how grateful I am," Rebecca said, leaning into him. "For all of this, for you, for the life we built." "We were lucky," Quincy said, wrapping his arm around her waist. "Lucky that Elizabeth Hartley saw something we did not see yet. Lucky that we were brave enough to take a chance." "It was not just luck," Professor Hartley said, appearing beside them with impeccable timing. "It was strategy. I saw two brilliant people who needed each other, and I made sure you had the opportunity to figure that out yourselves." "Best strategy ever," Rebecca declared, hugging her mentor. "Thank you for everything, my dear girl. It was my absolute pleasure." Professor Hartley smiled, watching baby Elizabeth laugh at something Quincy's mother had done. "Now, when are you going to give me another honorary grandchild to spoil? Elizabeth needs a sibling." Rebecca and Quincy exchanged glances, sharing a secret smile. "Actually," Rebecca said slowly, "we have some news on that front." Professor Hartley's shriek of joy startled the baby, but in the best possible way. And as Rebecca stood there surrounded by love and laughter and the promise of more joy to come, she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, with the man who had been her boss, then her friend, then her love, now her husband and the father of her children. All because a wise mentor had seen potential where others might have just seen a job opening and a qualified candidate. Professor Hartley had seen a love story waiting to unfold, and she had given them the gentle push they needed to find each other. 3 years later, with 2 children running around and a third on the way, Rebecca still thanked Professor Hartley regularly for that push. And their former mentor always smiled and said the same thing. "I just opened the door, my dear. You two were always meant to walk through it together." And they had, hand in hand, building a life that was everything they had dreamed of and more.